Some guys, man. But let's reel it back to the Lions. As yes, we do have the preseason game to break down. There is plenty to talk about on this, and some guys who are some people who are reacting in very interesting ways to this game. But we'll try to break it all down on the biggest storylines from this game. But I think right out of the gate, Jeremy, I could tell this was going to be a day that Twitter was going to blow up because the first team offense was out there. We got news before the game that Arthur Smith and Dan Campbell, Arthur Smith, the head coach of the Falcons, had met. They discussed it, and they were going to play both their starting offenses and defenses for the first quarter. And we had two drives that ate up basically the Falcons drive was pretty long.
It was almost 10 minutes long, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll talk about them in a second and what happened when the Lions played defense. But true to form, both of them played one quarter, and it was exactly one drive each. And I could tell that this was going to be an interesting game as soon as first drive, only drive for the first team offense, comes out and marches right down the field, gashing, I think on the local broadcast with Brandon Gowden, yes, I almost butchered his name again. And Devin Gardner would talk about, hey, this defensive line for the Falcons is pretty good. And then the Lions started to just immediately have their way with them. And it was every part of the offense that was getting involved. It was the offensive line basically establishing dominance. The first time we've really seen the five starting members, the offensive line together the way they have been in a football game. DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Everyone got involved, Jeremy. Everyone got involved in the first team defense. Jared Goff looked fine. He looked good. And the Kool-Aid immediately started flowing from everyone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a release, right? Like, we saw how last year ended. We saw all the reports coming out of training camp. I saw it with my own eyes. Like, it seemed like the offense was turning a corner, but we still needed to see like hard proof. And not that one drive in the preseason is hard proof.
Yeah.
But at this point, we're so starved to actually see it happen against
someone. We're thirsty.
Because rightfully, questions started to emerge, started to bubble up during training camp. Like, is this just them going against the Lions defense? And they came out and listen, this isn't going to be a stellar Falcons defense. I don't want to come out here and say like, wow, that was a top 10 defense the Lions did that against. The Falcons aren't going to be that good. But it confirmed a lot of things that we were hoping. It confirmed that this offensive line could be a monster because all of them, literally all five of them, were just driving people backwards. It confirmed that Jared Goff is feeling it right now. He threw a couple downfield shots. That kind of touch pass he threw to Amon-Ra for about 20 yards to get him first and goal was beautiful. Basically went 4 for 4. I know he went 3 for 4, but the one that he didn't complete was a drop pass that was right where it needed to be to Jamal Williams. And then, Swift out there makes a play. He scores a 9-yard touchdown. He did a lot of the heavy lifting for. So I don't know how you could have expected more out of that first drive. And I think like the cherry on the top there is like, we didn't even unleash DJ Chark. We didn't even unleash Josh Reynolds.
He wasn't part of that. He wasn't part of that. Reynolds wasn't part of it. It was Amon-Ra making 2 of those very big catches.
TJ Hawkinson didn't even play in this game. So like 3 of the Lions' biggest offensive weapons accounted for 0 yards on what was one of the more perfect drives I've seen out of this Lions offense in a really long time.
I think the big story from it was you mentioned Jared Goff. He does have a bit. He did have. He's better with his average. He was close to about 12 yards average on those 3.
That's huge. That's almost double what he averaged last year.
I think the big thing is just, again, finally getting the 5 stars of the offensive line between Jackson, Vaitai, Ragnow, Decker, and Sewell all playing together. And it's exactly what I think we kind of wanted to see. They established the run very well. DeAndre Swift ate very well for 20 yards on 4 carries. They marched down the field. It looked good. It looked refreshing. And it's fascinating. Like, I feel like we kind of go through cycles in the NFL, but I was not expecting the cycle to go back towards. It's like with the Kyle Shanahan offense, right? Like, this should be caveman football if you think about it, of going strong offensive line, strong running game. But it works. It's trendy, and it's what's in vogue in the NFL besides the Sean McVay offense. And the Lions are practicing it. They've wanted to establish dominance on the trenches. This is the style of football Dan Campbell wants to play, to beat you, to punch you in the nose, drown you, bury you in the shallows or the deep waters. to be the freight train coming your way. And
But it was also
he
like,
did it. He did it for a drive.
A good mixture of both, right? Like it was a 75-yard drive. They threw for 47 yards. So like more than half was through the air still. And I think what you really saw was the play action, right? The play action, the play action, play action. Everything that we've been saying, Jared Goff is going back to the play action.
Also very trendy in the new NFL offenses. Yes,
it was also what he was so successful at in Los Angeles, and so we saw kind of that influence on the offense. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say. Like it was only a 10-play drive, but they had one bad play, and it was the very first one where Swift got bottled up for 1 or 0 yards, and then everything else was a win. Every other play, I guess, except for the Jamal Williams drop, was a win.
Just dub. Yeah, I'll be curious to see what happens. I'm curious because I don't know right now. Is game 2 technically the dress rehearsal game now, or is it game 3?
I don't think that has been settled across the NFL.
Okay.
I think teams
everyone's still feeling out this 3. Yeah. Well, I hope I like that they communicate with Arthur Smith and they both kind of agree with it. And by the way, neither of these teams game planned for each other until like Thursday.
Yeah.
And we'll talk. I think that's key one for the next topic we're going to talk about. But I found that fascinating too. I feel like, we're going to have to all learn as we go.
And there's going to be a lot of communicating next week with Indy since they have the joint practices, right? And
they have the joint practices,
the way they approach the game. But we'll get into that in a little bit.
We also talked, I think, on one of the podcasts about how they might play more. You'll see more out of the joint practices too because they can control the whistle,
right?
A little bit more. So like they're more likely to play more of their starters, especially on quarterbacks, because you can like if a guy's about to get hit, you can blow the whistle and be like, let's not have him get hit.
Right.
Like, okay, you got credit with the sack. Cool. So that's the good news out of the way. Then the defense comes out and plays immediately after all the Kool-Aid starts flowing, after Mina Kimes is posting pictures of chimps drinking Powerade and everything. So the first team defense needs work.
It does.
The one good highlight I will say, and we'll get into its standouts on defense, but Aiden Hutchinson immediately a tackle for loss. But then I maybe it's a credit to Aiden that he's immediately getting double teamed after that. But the story of the defense on the day was really nobody could set the edge.
Yeah.
And you were letting after the tackle for loss, especially from Marcus Mariota. Mariota ran all over the Detroit Lions. He had 3 carries for average 7.7 yards, obviously caps it off with a touchdown at the end there. And he got to throw pretty well. He was moving a lot in the pocket, and the Lions really didn't have much of an answer for him. And that, that drive went on pretty long. It ate up the rest of the first quarter, but the defense was giving up over about 8 yards, about a little more than 8 yards a play. Not great, Bob.
No, it wasn't great. And I think part of it is frustrating. They had, Atlanta converted 2 third downs, including a really early one that was just a draw up the middle. And I can hear all the Lions fans screaming, all the Kool-Aid drinkers screaming, well, they didn't game plan against a mobile quarterback. They don't have a mobile quarterback on their practice field, so none of these guys have practiced that sort of thing.
But there's so many mobile quarterbacks in the NFL, Jeremy.
That's right.
You shouldn't have to game plan against a mobile quarterback.
It's something that you absolutely have to be prepared for, and certainly one that you're going to have in the back of your mind for week 1 when Jalen Hurts and a really good Eagles running game is in town. And so, a lot of this is, yes, it's very concerning. A lot of it, I think, is, I'm not going to say it's by design, but I think a lot of it is the trade-off that you have for having a more aggressive front. When you have these guys that are knifing up the field, and I pointed this out on Twitter, the Lions of Atlanta's 29 rushing attempts, 7 of them went for 0 or less. 1 out of every 4 was stopped at the line of scrimmage or earlier. So the Lions were doing a really good job there. The problem is everything else was an explosive play. They bottled up. They ran for 172 yards on the other 22 attempts, which is 7.8 yards per carry. Now I get that a lot of that was quarterback scrambling, and Arthur Smith even went on to say none of those were planned. We didn't have any. We didn't dial up any quarterback runs. Those were all
Mariota. Mariota's just very good at ad-libbing.
Sure, yes. But Ritter's not that. He's good, but he's not that good. And so I think like you said right at the top, the main problem, at least with the quarterback stuff, is contained from your edges. You can't let those guys escape the pocket. And they did all game. Charles Harris was particularly bad at that, which was surprising to see because he's been so strong all camp. And like there is a little bit of legitimacy to like, yeah, they probably haven't practiced it. They probably haven't seen it that much, but guys like Charles Harris should know better. And so that's part of the problem. The other problem is the linebackers. And listen, like how many times did I say this offseason, like I'm concerned about the defensive tackles. I'm concerned about the linebackers. I'm concerned that this team is going to let teams run all over them. And then what happens in the very first game of the preseason? All of that. The defensive tackles were not playing pretty well. Were not playing well at all. They weren't playing well at all. The linebackers were on and off. We'll get to some of the individual performances there, but in general, linebacking core not up to snuff. And, you know, they were just regularly belting out 15, 20-yard runs in this game, and including in that first drive.
I think it was just surprising to me that they just couldn't get the edge set, like for what they've invested in the edges right now. And like, I know, and again, we'll get into Aiden Hutchinson later. I think it's an honor to him that he's getting double teamed right out of the gate, but I think the Falcons immediately understood like the main threat to stopping our plays is Aiden Hutchinson. And as soon as he got bottled up, it's like, hey, we can just march down the field. And like, I think you're right. It was frustrating to watch the third downs because I kept waiting for the bend don't break to come, and the Lions kept breaking. You bent them and they immediately would break.
That's why I think this is why they're choosing to, like, this is their method of going down with this ship. It's like they know they aren't very talented on defense, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to try to create a bunch of negative plays by being really aggressive up front and hopefully get ourselves into some third downs. And then anything can happen on third down. On this day, at least early on, they just couldn't get off the field on third down.
Yeah, I don't know what stat there's going to be for explosive plays, but if the Lions in regular season look like they did against the Falcons first team, Lions are going to be probably a leader in giving up explosive / big plays. Like they'll get a lot of plays where they get some negative yardage or 0 yardage, but then, you know, all it's going to take is one, like they're going to get busted coverage pretty well, or an edge isn't going to get set, and suddenly there's going to be a big run.
Well, that's going
to be really frustrating to watch. That's going to be incredibly frustrating.
The one thing that we didn't learn from this game, I don't think, is how the secondary is going to hold up, because the starters only got one.
Will
drive
Harris left a little bit early too. Yeah,
but how many times did Mariota throw in that game? Like twice.
Yeah, so he threw 2 times. But the 2 times he did throw, he picked up 36 yards total, 18 each.
A 24-yarder and an 8-yarder. Or 12-yarder. But yeah, like that to me is still very much to be determined. And maybe we'll get a better sample size. Maybe we'll get a better idea of that when the Colts come to town next week, or we go to Colts, I guess.
Well, that really depends on how much they play Matt Ryan.
Sure.
So. True. I don't. Who's their QB2?
I don't know.
In town.
I don't.
I should know this because I'm the Colts hater here. Oh, Sam Ellinger and Jack Cohn.
No one should have known that.
Well, I do. You have to know
you looked it up. Let's be clear.
I did. I just Google is my memory. Like, listen, I have Google near me. I don't need to have a good memory. We have to get into the topic that I really hate, though.
We'll just blow through this one because it's silly.
Oh my God. So I feel like I could put Lions Twitter into the meme with the guys sweating over the 2 buttons between it's preseason and the Lions blew another game in a very Lions way. And we should be panicking. And like, look, David Blau fumbles. Okay, fine. That play given up, which you told me
Chris Boswell. Chris Boswell gave the 4th and 9.
There's multiple jersey numbers for like offense and defense. They're shared, so I keep getting messed up every time I look it up. Chris Boswell gets completely turned around on the play that Ritter gets home to Jared Bernard. So like, it was bad. It was a bad sequence that allowed the Falcons to win the game, and they weren't going to play for they didn't want to play for the tie because there is no overtime in preseason, and they went for it on 4th and 9 from the 21. The Lions completely failed to stop it. But Jeremy, come on, man. It's the third teams out there. Right. And Ritter's they're still their QB2. He's the young guy that they're trying to feel out. But also it's the third teams out there on a defense that already isn't very deep.
Yeah, no, and the Lions were very close to winning this game. Remember, they did come back in the 4th quarter to take the lead fairly late. Then they had a really good 4-minute drive going before a very fluky fumble happens with your third string quarterback, who, in my opinion, is the second string quarterback. But anyways, we'll get into that. Yeah, and then you kind of give up a fluky 4th and 9 where you send an all-out blitz, you contain the quarterback well, and then you just trust your guy to win his one-on-one, and it's Cedric Boswell, a guy who's not going to be on the team. So if you're getting upset over that, like, you need to really figure out your priorities in life here, because that's not a big deal.
Yeah,
it's not a sign, an omen. It's just your third string cornerback, outside cornerback, didn't do what he was supposed to. Your quarterback had a fluky fumble. Big freaking deal. Let's move on.
Yeah, nobody really cares about the results in preseason except for John Harbaugh and the people degenerate enough to bet on preseason games. Like, we need to stop doing this. Like, I knew we balanced it pretty well because we started with way too much Kool-Aid, but now we're balancing it a little bit here at the end of the game with way too much doomer talk. So I guess balance, yin and yang in all things Detroit Lions, Jeremy.
That's what we're here for.
The silver and blue yin and yang symbol. That's how we do it. Doom on one side, Kool-Aid on the other.